I didn't have a computer until I was about 13 years old, but when I got one, I fell in love. My career really started with a love of video games. I was fortunate enough that my parents trusted me enough. If my parents did not make that move, there would be no PCS. I'm Anthony Mongeluzo, and welcome to Built to Scale. Now, Built to Scale was something that we came up with as a slogan for what we do at PCS, but it makes a whole lot of sense for this new podcast. And what I want to do before we get into the guests and before we get into the full formal shows, I want to give you my story, and which is the PCS origin story. And basically what it is how a kid, literally, I got into technology when I was really young, turned $600 into now a company that does $35 million in annual sales. So I want to give you the real story. So when I started, my career really started with a love of video games. For the folks out there in their 40s, the Nintendo Entertainment System. However, any gamer back then knew as we progressed to the 90s that the real games were on the PCs. Well, guess what? Growing up in Philly, I didn't have a computer until I was about 13 years old, but when I got one, I fell in love. And what I started to do was learn how to program that computer to play my favorite video games. Little did I know that would teach me the basics, which would become a lifelong career for me. So I got my start building what's called, and most people tuned in here won't even know, it was called a bulletin board system. A BBS, and I was a sysop. And what that ended up doing was that taught me some business fundamentals. I charged a monthly fee for local users to dial in. Yes, dial in, think AOL. They could come on my board. They could talk to other people, share messages. They could play video games, and these video games were basically text-based, or they could download software and share software, which again, back in 1995, that was something pretty special. I was fortunate enough that my parents trusted me enough to get me now up to 4 computers. I had 7 phone lines coming in, and it was just a credible experience. If you ever come here to PCS and visit, I actually have the original equipment on my desk upstairs. So my first business lesson, though, came from there. So in 1997, my parents moved to Medford, New Jersey. Now, as a kid, I had to basically go to a new high school in the middle of summertime, right? Transferring to my senior year, which was a whole different experience. But if my parents did not make that move, there would be no PCS. So as I mentioned earlier, going back to my Philly roots and really how it shaped my life, whether it's the grind, whether it's learning about street smart. So one of the things that I think made me a little bit special as a computer guy, if you know most tech people, they don't like to make eye contact. They don't like to talk to people. There was really 2 things, and it's very relevant now with Hulk Hogan no longer with us. I think growing up in Philly with my dad having a bar business, which my grandparents started in the 1950s, and also aside from being a fan of video games, right, we're talking 80s pop culture, Hulk Hogan and WWE. And what I always noticed when watching wrestling, the best wrestlers sometimes didn't always make it to the top, but the people that were showmen, they knew how to do it. And I just had such a love, and maybe I wouldn't be a computer guy if I was 6'6" and weighed 300 pounds, but with this physique, we're not cutting WWE. But going back to the homestead, I was able to see so much. The way that my dad talked to the patrons, I got to go with him on the weekends and just saw how he did ordering. And when you grow up in the bar business, there's a just different type of people, different lifestyle. And I was fortunate enough, I went to Our Lady of Loretta grade school, and I used to walk to my dad's bar after school. And I think those moments in time really taught me a lot about how to be. I'll never say that my parents were the best business people, because frankly they weren't. They had a lot of success in the 80s, but then I also saw some of the downfall in the 90s, and I think that gives me some of the ways that I really grew the business without debt, right? No private equity, no outside money. People still ask me 25 years later, how do you do it? And I said, I was just fiscally smart. I did not take risks that I didn't need to. Maybe if I took some outside money, maybe when I introed, I would say we're a $50 or $60 million company. But I love the joy and the freedom of being able to do what I want to do and having no one to answer to other than our customers, of course, because that's really the way it is. So just that whole scene in Philly, and the other thing is part of my career, which you'll see, when I used to watch the news, obviously Fox 29 is my favorite. It was my favorite back then, But I used to love watching the sports, especially the 93 Phils. But anytime there was a technology segment that came on, that's something I wanted to do. And, proud to say today, over 16 years with the studio and getting to share. And I hope, kids and tech enthusiasts, when they see me on the air, they're like, hey, you know what? We're going to get something real. We're going to get something cool. And that's something that we really try to do. And I can tell you the team at 29 really strives to do that. So, anything that I do, my mannerisms, you probably see my hands moving here. I think that's such a Philly thing. And what I could say to people is growing up in the city, you do learn to have eyes behind your head. You do get a certain sense of street smarts, right? And there's business smarts and there's street smarts. And I think if you could combine the two, that's not 1 + 1 is 2, that's 1 + 1 is 6. Because in today's day and age, right, technology, everyone's on their phone texting. We had none of that stuff. We went to the playground. I mean, the biggest tech we had was, sitting 4 feet away from your TV with the Nintendo because the cord was this long. So I really encourage anyone out there, post-COVID, things like that, get a little grit, get a little street smart, visit the city, and you know what? You might learn a little bit more about yourself. So many people ask me, building PCS, and it's a common misnomer. I always get, hey, Ant, how did you build PCS from the basement? So what I will say, my bulletin board system in 95 was in the basement, right? But in Medford, when my parents moved, we were in a single floor, pretty small house, probably about 1,200 square feet. And PCS actually originated from a spare bedroom. The crazy thing is, and I'll put some pictures up, we'll send them over. My mom, I've been out of that house for 22 years, PCS has been gone. And if you go to that room, it looks the same. The original HP monitor's still there, all the first awards. I remember one of our favorites, the South Jersey Top 25. I mean, that was a real special day for the team. And that South Jersey 25 award was us placing in the top 10 of the fastest growing companies in the region, which, starting your business at 20 years old and being up there with some of the big boys and girls and, making the papers, just really special. We went on, thanks to the team, to win probably over 70, 80. I couldn't even tell you how many awards over the years, but it all started in that bedroom and very unconventional. So basically, I would go door to door fixing computers, just, like the Geek Squad. But frankly, the Geek Squad didn't exist. I was working at the supermarket, Acme, or as we say in Philly, Acme. And the store manager, a gentleman by the name of Bill McCarthy, was kind enough to let me put a flyer up with the old school rip-off phone numbers. And believe it or not, people ripped them off and they called. I mean, imagine now these days, I'm showing up to people's homes I don't know with a little computer bag and didn't know what I was walking into. But the real change happened when my parents' next door neighbors, Pat and Donald Menshaw. Unfortunately, Pat's no longer with us. She was a realtor. Ironically enough, she had such a great voice. The reason why we moved to the house in Medford, she did the voiceover on the VHS tape. Kids, you don't know what that is, don't worry about it, but it's digital stuff, we'll say. And my parents saw the house virtually on a TV, and 2 months later, we were there. Pat had so many realtor connections. So what ended up happening with me, I ended up going to Prudential, Fox and Roach, Berkshire Hathaway. I'd print out my Outlook calendar and the realtors would sign up. I'd either teach them how to use Trend MLS. I would fix their computers, set them up for network printing, go to their homes, offices, and that really went viral. So not taking too much time, but from that realtor start from 2000 to late 2002, I got up to over 500 customers. For one man working out of his parents' spare bedroom, that was quite a bit of pressure. 7 days a week, no days off. I would have a date night on Wednesday night. I would try to keep that kind of open. And typically Saturdays and Sundays, I would work during the morning. And this went on for years. And thank God I was in a business of love, because it's a real big ask. It's a real big drain. And remember, not just the work on the computers. When I would go out, I would then have to go home. I would have to do the invoicing and have to make sure the calendar was set. And remember, I had a very tight calendar because I had no resources other than me. And if something took long, maybe a virus removal, that would really throw you off. So it was so tough to give great service, check the voicemail, which the original phone's still there, where you actually call and put a star and a secret code in, where I would check my messages. And as tough as those days were, I really look at them fondly. So then we step up into part 2 of PCS. I hired my first employee. I basically did the math that if I was able to bill and at the same rate that I was doing, that I could cover this person, it was a good business decision. So I took the risk, and crazily enough, my parents let this guy work in their home. It was awkward. Again, small home. He'd put his lunch in their fridge, use our restrooms, and there wasn't too much privacy. Let's put it that way. A couple months later, I announced to my parents, great news, we're growing. I hired another person. That's when my dad kindly asked me to move the office out. So that took us to the next journey over at Lexington Road over in Medford, where again, another business step, another lesson, right? That rent, I think it was probably $1,200 a month, maybe $1,400 a month. That was scary. And as all the new entrepreneurs know, it's not just the rent. You have to pay for internet. You have to get cabling. You need desks and all these different things. And again, when you're at that point, 22 years old, that's a big burden. But I could tell you, it was really one of the cornerstones of getting me going. And what I learned from that is there's not much I can control, right? I can't control the weather. I can't control how people think. I can't control opinions. But one lesson and one thing that I learned, I can control how hard I hustle. And that's really what I did. This business, and as so many of you know, you just gotta hustle. I mean, you have to be smart, you have to do the right thing. But if you're not there hustling, my dad used to say to me when I'd leave the house sometimes at 6:30 in the morning, and he'd be awake. My dad borrowed or never slept. And he'd say, hey, why are you leaving so late? There's some other guy out there that got up an hour earlier and he's working harder than you. You'll get him. The early bird now, my dad would have been 87. So the early bird gets the worm, which really runs true. So if I could tell you anything about the beginning and the journey and everything what we did, it's all about the hustle. And the hustle's not just going out and working, it's bettering yourself, right? It's reading books, it's nonstop learning. And as an IT person, what I could say, meeting so many great business owners and being the technology guy, I got to see a lot of great CEOs in action. And what I try to do also when building this business, I tried to Frankenstein it. I noticed certain traits of certain CEOs that were just awesome. Certain people knew how to run meetings really well. Certain people knew how to be direct. Certain people knew how to tell you didn't do a good job, but you still felt good after it. So I tried to take every trait that I could and what you should do, you don't want to be someone else, make it your own.